artistic duo started 5 years ago, I think, and we studied together, and we were both in the same university, studied dance and choreography, and then we met there. We've been friends for like the first 2 years, and then in the third year we got together and we started also working together. And then from there our work developed, and at the beginning it was more sort of dance related, I think, like more dance theater related, and then it moved much more into the performative art and performance art.
Because we were presenting work in dance spaces, and it was we were always really on the edge of disciplines. So then the critics were like, what is this? Is this dance? Is it not dance? Why is it here? This is like something else. It's performance, maybe video. So they were like, okay. So then we started exploring other types of venues and other places to present our work, and they were much more welcoming and embracing and interested in nurturing that type of work. So then we kind of left the dance venues behind, and then our work became less and less and less and less about movement, which was never really about it in the beginning. It always starts from the body, but movement only really comes in to help whatever concept, whatever theme we're exploring. It's not about movement itself. So we don't consider ourselves dancers or choreographers per se, but we also are kind of imposters because we use a lot of different types of arts
and mediums.
We didn't study or anything, so we're just makers, and we make whatever we need to make to bring something to reality or that we're satisfied with. It's hard.
It is, particularly because we are also a couple in private. So we also have like a romantic relationship. So there's loads of power structure that get questioned all the time. But
I mean, it doesn't stop. It translates into work and into life. And the interesting thing is that even in work and in the artist community, the fact that we're a couple plays a part in it. So we're not just a performance duo, we are a unit everywhere and everything, and it's reinforced somehow, and people become more interested by that, and it's this whole theatrical performance in itself, that we are aware of it as well. When we go to events, it's this
this thing,
fabulous couple, whatever, it has a lot of different layers to it. But it's kind of hard because we work at work, and then we go home and work continues because we continue discussing things while we're cooking dinner, and then while we're in bed, and then we go to work, but then life things come as well, and sometimes it's hard to separate, but it all just kind of blends. But all work is very much about our own life as well. So I guess it's very incestuous in a way.
And at the same time, I think it's also a question of letting go your ego. And I think, I don't know, like I have this moment where, I have this thing and I'm like, oh, but like who did this project? And like I start making like little lines and I'm like, this project is more mine than yours. And I don't know, I think like that moment needs to pass. Like you need to sort of acknowledge it, but then, like in general, when we finish a performance, when we make something, at the end, I'm always like, I actually don't remember who had this idea first.
And sometimes it's totally like, I will say something, and then that's my idea, and then we develop it, and then after a while it's like, no, but I thought of that. It's like, did you? I swear I thought of that. And like, there's literally like no boundaries as to where that individuality finishes and starts.
And it's as well like removing maybe a little bit of value from like this concept of like the idea as a thing. And it's more like the idea is part of the process. So like what is important is not the initial idea, but maybe it's about like the process that we make to bring this idea to life.
Oh yeah. I would say I am a dreamer. So I always have, if I come up with ideas, they're always these kind of like impossible things that can never be accomplished where we are right now, at least in our careers. So then he has the job of kind of like pulling it back down, yeah, into reality. And then I have the job as well of like picking that reality and pushing it as further as it can be closer to the dream. So it's this kind of back and forth until we find this kind of medium when it comes to ideas that is like the perfect balance.
And I think as well we bring like different things, because for example I am a much more safe person, I guess. Like I question a lot what we put on stage, particularly if it's related to like sexuality and like kinks and fetishes. Like I always have that little moment of like, isn't this too much?
And I'm just like,
and it's like, no,
just do it. Just let's.
So
kill
he's
them
really
all.
he's really pushing me into that. And then I guess from my side, what I bring, it's maybe a more round, I don't know, like more insight from the academic part of it, because I like to read loads and I just feed that into him, but not that has more value somehow. Like I don't think that academia has more value than reality, but that's what I'm interested in and that's what I bring into the process.
Yeah, no, but it's good because it brings the knowledge that instead of us just starting from zero, it's like, okay, we have this idea and it's like, oh, that these people have done these things and they've said these things about that, and then we're like, okay, so we have already those things to
those ground
moving on forward.
I think so. I think that it has somehow this layer that like people are confronted with it and they need to deal with it, and it's something that if they wouldn't have, it wouldn't really open that discussion. Like I think that each of us has fetishes, the problem and kinks. The problem with it is that we still place a value on top of them. So we have like some fetishes that are absolutely considered normal and that's fine, like underwear and things like that. Like this is absolutely fine. Like we have like on the road, like we have these billboards with underwear and it's somehow fetishized. And this is completely normal. This is completely natural and like concept of natural. But there's other stuff like, I don't know, like water sports or things like that people still look with a very
it's like,
like this is gross.
How do people actually do that?
Yeah, and it's a question of like questioning the margins. What about that made it abject? Like it's something that is a lot in our work is the objection. So like this thing that this marginal body that like as soon as you have something that comes out from your body, it becomes the other. So it becomes strange and gross. And that like the abject has loads to do also with like patriarchal way that we see things and like things like that, because like menstrual blood is as soon like it becomes something gross, but for example semen, it takes so much more time to decay.
Yeah, because it's linked to like fantasies and pleasure and patriarchy. Exactly. And like it's kind of like wanting it.
Yeah.
So then you want it, and then suddenly after a while you're like, okay, take this off me. But I think what we do with our work, even though sometimes it is a little bit violent and quite like forceful, is that then in the context that is presented, it's quite normalized.
Yeah.
And very the observer is also very much in control as well. So it ends up being kind of like, okay. Yeah. It's not really a big deal.
Yeah. It becomes for them a safe place where also to explore these
and
things.
Question it. So then if you don't create such a big deal around it and you present it as a normal thing, then it normalizes a little bit more for them. I mean, the last work we did where we had some self-mutilation and we had like these pea sculptures, we had a 7-year-old watching it. And then at the end, her and her mom were with us and she was asking questions and we were just talking about the pea sculptures and talking about this thing about, it was in your body, now it's coming out, and why do you don't like it anymore? What's bad about it? And she had no problem and she loved the work, So it really is about how you present, and that's what we're trying to do with the work as well. So yes, it is very much the norm. Sometimes it's things that we have to negotiate with like venues, and that's okay, that's fine. Sometimes it's when we're trying to publicize it, for example, in social media, and that is just so annoying. But
I think that censorship like has particularly like on social media and things, has a much bigger impact. Because I don't know, like to me, censorship is up to a certain point. Like right now, it feels somehow the censorship is becoming something like burning witches to the stake. You know, like is that line that it crossed a little bit too much, and then that brings like political implication, because like nudity is not anymore nudity. Nudity is only sexuality, and I don't think that is like you can have nudity without sex involved. You know, we all have a body, and is totally normal, and there's nothing like gross about it. Like there's nothing terrible about it, and it's this layer of shame that we put on these things that is not just a simple shame, but is a shame of a bigger construct, is a shame of, you know, like minorities, is a shame of the female compared to the man. And it's
an oppression.
And somehow
it's basically telling everyone that you need to be ashamed of your body, you need to be ashamed of your desires and your sexuality, and that puts a lot of oppression on people, and it will affect the relationships that you have then with everyone else around you.
Because and also the relationship you have with yourself.
Exactly, but that's exactly why it affects the relationship around you, because you don't accept yourself as you are, because you've been taught to be ashamed of it. So, you know, I mean, every week I post something on Instagram that gets deleted, and that's annoying, but yes, for sure it makes it more important, is that the word you said? To carry on with that work and to try and push it. But when it comes to social media and things, it's almost unwinning a battle, like it's an impossible battle, because I mean, there's no way I can prevail in that world. So then we are trying to put it in art world. But the problem with art world is that, yes, we are showing it, but it's a very limited amount of people that have access.
And normally people that attend the art world are also people that are already there.
Okay with that, you know? So they're not the people that need to be exposed to this kind of work or exposed to those images, because they are fine. And the people that need to be exposed to these things are not coming to the galleries, are not coming to
because
museums.
Of other different thing that, you know, are to be talked about, like elitism of art and like all these things that like hierarchy and things like that. So there's a bigger context, basically. I think is related to the question that we said before, that is about like how inclusive the work can be, and how many people can we reach through it, and how many, you know, people we can ask question about how they perceive the life and how they go with it. And I guess it's finding somehow a way to putting a work out there that is seen and discussed by as many people as possible. So I don't know if performance is the right medium right now, just because of the liveness of it. Because I believe that performance, you should be able to see it live, because documentation of a performance is always something different. So maybe it's, I don't know, to think about a Hollywood movie about it.
I mean, it's just really about getting it to the masses, but that's just. I mean, I don't even know how.
To the masses as a concept, because
But it's also about like the way, again, like the way they present the work. So it shouldn't be presented in a forceful way and dictating way. It needs to be in a way that opens up a discussion, you know, and opens up point of views from everyone. Because in the end, when it comes to your body and sexuality, there are many acceptable ways of approaching it. But the thing is, you need to be aware as to why you perceive it in that way. You know, when it comes to like prudiness or monogamy, is like everyone accepts those things as natural, but they don't question as to why it's natural for them. So if you understand the whole and then accept monogamy as the correct thing for you, for example, that's absolutely fine. If you just fall into the normative idea of it but don't understand why this is, then you probably
or if
not
this
gonna
is okay with your body, you know,
Yeah.
like if this is okay with what you think, and then like, I don't know, you find yourself like battling with yourself and shaming yourself because of all this, like maybe this is not the right thing for you, but maybe you never question it because that is not what, you know, the normative
yeah.
part of the world consider acceptable to question.
But definitely sexual freedom is linked with peace, because sexual freedom encompasses a understanding of love in a different way, and encompasses an understanding that everyone else is just another body like you that you can come into contact with without too much you know, emotional value around it. I don't know, or that's not the way to phrase it, but you know, like without too much difference in what it is by itself. So yeah, you become equal or identical others.
Yeah, and also here I think it's about the context and how you put it down to people. I think that it has different layers and different ways to approach the work, and each person will take the work in a different way because they approach it from, you know, like a personal knowledge level and a personal archive that they have different. But I think that something that we tend to do in our performances, for example, is to create a safe space for other people to approach them. So in all the performances we do, like for how violent, how, you know, working on sexuality they are, we always tell them, like, if this is too much for you, feel free to leave the space.
And
you know, like, and come back. Like you have this openness that like makes you feel as an audience member not, I guess, scared and really in control. Because I believe that like when you have that amount of power in yourself is when you better can understand things, and when you're more open to accept,
especially when it comes to things of like sexuality.
Yeah.
You know, if you are if you are in an environment that is highly sexual and you are not in control, I mean that's quite scary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I mean, I don't want to say this, but it's almost like violation. You know,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
So it's what it becomes.
Yeah.
So if you are given the power to control yourself within that environment, then they're your choices, and then you're not being violated by that anymore.
Exactly.
And that's the most important thing with many types of work, I think.
And it's somehow, I think, also like a misconception that we have about, for example, sexual practices and things like submission and domination. Like there is a huge amount of power in submission, and this is something that we need to realize, and we maybe need to differentiate like this idea of like, you know, submissive and dominant as like one has all the power and the other one doesn't. Like it's a question of, I work a lot on it, for example, and I feel such a huge amount of power every time I am in submission, because like the moment I'm like, no, this gives me the power of be like, okay, let's stop everything. Like we are back into zero, you know, like you're not on a higher hierarchical system than me or something like this. So there is, I don't know, I think like we bring a lot of this into the work and like try find a way to give power to the audience and find a way for them to realize that they have this power, like, and how to use their power. Start from the concept that we do bring an external like fashion element in the performances, but that's more sort of like visual aesthetic that I guess like every kind of artist has, and that is influenced by, you know, like life and things we see around and things we get attracted to, and normally like our aesthetic falls into this sort of like more fetishized world.
Yeah, because there are fetishes that encompass the way you dress.
Yeah, exactly. But then at the same time, I also believe that like clothes are clothes. Like, and you know, like in my daily life, I'm very open. I don't really mind. I'm like, it's a piece of fabric. Like, it's not like the genderization that we put on them, and all this kind of stuff is an external construct again. And I don't know, I tend to just see them for what they are, which is like pieces of fabric that like I can put on me, and I can decide
Yes,
and
but
shape myself.
But you also do it in a aware way of what the constructs are.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a purposeful way of deconstructing those ideas.
Yeah.
You know, like the fact that we wear heels every day, or the fact that you know, if you want to show like, there's the constructs of like skin showing and chest showing and nipple showing that like becomes, you know, erotic or provocative or you know, sexual, and then it's a how to then, you know, attend certain events in those ways and diminishing those ideas and naturalizing again. I guess it's about like normalizing everything and neutralizing those constructs that really, they're just, again, like you said, objects that mean nothing. You know, a skirt is not female. It's a piece of fabric cut in a specific way. So that's what it is. So by wearing a skirt to work doesn't mean anything. And I think we do that in every aspect that we can in our life. So yes, we do it with our work, but then we do it in a daily life with our own wardrobe. Sometimes more subtly than others, sometimes really, really pushing it as much as we can.
Yeah. But again, it depends, I guess, how you feel that day. Like, you know, it's also realizing that we are in a continuous fluxus, and one day you will feel in a way and the other day you will feel another one.
It's definitely for unifying. And then I think we go back to that same sense of like normalizing everything. So really removing whatever constructs objects have, like we're just talking about clothes. And then when we do things like creating penis casts, it's not even just on objects. It's like when we objectify what parts of our body to then normalize it. It's kind of weird a little bit, but it's you know, when we create these casts and we just stand them or make them into candles, or they just become this harmless, when they have this harmless sense to them, then it kind of like removes that evilness that some object have. So in this case, I'm talking about like an erection. It's such an aggressive thing that for some reason we believe it has this aggressive notion. And when we reduce it to a simple toy or a simple object or a candle, it becomes silly. It becomes, you know, like I said, harmless.
Yeah. So and it makes you realize like somehow that these levels of layers of, you know, like knowledge and things, like it's all really built up in our mind, and it takes like such a small details to change the perception of it and to have a whole different view of what it is and be like, that is just silly, you know, like not a big deal. I guess lots of the work is about like, it's not a big deal, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, really little details. I mean, we have a video piece where we have penises going erect, and that's just the penis, and they go up and down by themselves, but we've covered them in glitter.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it becomes this very like
sort of dance,
cute,
yeah,
it's
very
like
cute choreography of
thing.
Like penises, you know, like and
it literally, it looks adorable and not aggressive at all.
Yeah. And then you have a whole text about like failure of like performance art and how performance art like is failing continuously, and I don't know, it's like this also like two layers that are completely like chucked together randomly that makes you like spark idea that you're like, oh, you know, like I never thought about it. Like as soon as you start talking about performance, it's about like sexual performance, but then again, like,
yeah, I
it's
mean,
not a big deal.
It's really just about always subverting the meaning of what it is.
Yeah.
So and using it into ways that like you really want to understand it. So, you know, if we have anal hooks and we build a beautiful chandelier, which we did a couple months ago, we build a chandelier and put it on a dining room, then it's kind of this thing that, okay, it's really not that it's not offensive, it's not aggressive, it's not scary. It's like, yeah, I know that those objects are used by people and they go inside asses and they use sexually, and it's included in pleasure and all of these things that people are scared of. But now I have it in my living room and it's beautiful and it's people love it.
And it's a little bit removing as well, like, you know, like that moment when, I don't know, when you're like in a porn shop and
there's shame in there as well.
Yeah,
right?
and like you enter in the room of fetishes and you're like, oh, I hope that no one is looking at me. And I'm like, why? Like, who cares? It's not a big deal, you know?
So,
yeah. Thank you.